A warm welcome and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Welcome to our conversation about holistic cellular health and what it truly takes to repair, regenerate, and rejuvenate your body from the inside out. Not just at the symptom level, not just at the organ level, but at the cellular and molecular level where true healing begins. My name is Sabine Messner, and I have the great honor of guiding you through today's conversation, diving deep into what actually takes place inside your cells and how you can support your body's innate self-healing intelligence by optimizing cellular function. This conversation is about understanding the root cause of imbalance and learning how the body can restore itself when given the right signals, the right environment, and the right support. But before we dive into this very important topic, it is my absolute pleasure and joy to introduce someone truly special to you. I'm honored to welcome Dr. Walter Cohen.
Good
Dr. Walter
morning.
Cohen is a San Diego osteopathic physician with extensive postgraduate training in neuromuscular skeletal medicine, cranial osteopathy, visceral manipulation, and integrative healing, including years of advanced study with some of the world's leading osteopathic educators. With thousands of hours of hands-on therapeutic experience, he is a lifelong student and passionate researcher who blends deep clinical expertise with a holistic, system-based approach to healing. Known for his relentless curiosity, love of learning, and warmth of spirit, Dr. Walter brings uncommon depth, compassion, humor, and insight to every patient he serves. But beyond all doctorates, Dr. Walter is deeply convinced of the body's innate capacity to heal, and his clinical work continues to prove this true. He walks alongside his patients, going deep on the healing journey with them rather than simply treat symptoms. And that's why it is no surprise that Dr. Walter is joined today by one of his patients, whose name is Paige Russell. Paige is a civil engineer based in San Diego, California. She's a beach lover with a very active lifestyle, a passion for travel, and dreams of exploring the world. However, instead of living that dream, Paige experienced a catastrophic health breakdown that completely changed her life. Her nervous system and immune system essentially shut down entirely. Simple daily tasks became impossible. Over the course of nearly 4 years, Paige lost not only her career, but much of her personal life as well, spending most of their time isolated at home, simply trying to survive. Today, you will hear Paige powerful and deeply moving healing journey and how together with Dr. Walter she was able to support her body, building herself from the ground up, meaning from the cellular level up. So this is a story about resilience, but it is also a story and a conversation about the new science, the holistic medicine that we much need in this world. So without further ado, it is my great joy to warmly welcome Dr. Walter Cohen and Paige Rudd. Thank you so much for being here, you guys.
Thank you, Sabine. Thanks for that generous introduction. And thank you, Paige, for being here. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen with you. And I'm very excited today because I get to introduce what's really a brand new field of medicine. Um, but before we get into that, as Sabine mentioned, I practice traditional osteopathy, meaning I'm using my hands to actually optimize anatomical relationships in the body. And when we optimize the anatomy so that it functions at its the highest potential, then the physiology of the body will improve and the body can self-heal and self-correct. And that's such an important concept in osteopathy and I believe with centropics, which also supports the ability of the body to heal from within, and very much is supportive of my work. So I was introduced to Centropics by a physician friend who was here for a course that we were taking together in San Diego. And she brought the cloud and invited my partner and I to use it freely. And my partner enjoyed it so much, she was she just said, we have to get this into our lives. So we acquired a cloud, and between the two of us, we began to see these changes, improved sleep and recovery, up regulation of our parasympathetic nervous systems, which is the rest and digest nervous system. And I began to have such good effects with it myself. I thought, why not something this good? Why not share it with my patients? So I actually started to bring the clouds into the office and to use them every session I could. And I found that I got further. One day I had a colleague treat me while I was lying on the cloud, and she noticed how much easier and deeper I treated because of the symbiosis between osteopathy and what the cloud is doing in the body. Um, we have seen improved GI function in patients, and I travel everywhere with my cloud. I actually went on safari to Africa, and I brought the mini cloud with me. And my one piece of advice is be cautious about eating wildebeest. About 5 people, myself included, all had a hard time with it. And I went back to my tent. I folded up my cloud, put it on my belly, ran it for several cycles, and I was back in the Jeep that afternoon. So it really is just incredible. I see enhanced microcirculation and blood flow. I see it helps people with reduced inflammation. I know one day I overworked in lifting weights and working out, didn't stretch enough, and then worked a full day. And by the end of it, my knee was a little achy and a little swollen. And I had about an hour and a half of paperwork to do, notes, and I just folded up the cloud again, put it on my knee. And an hour and a half later, I walked out, no knee pain, no inflammation, all gone. And I've seen that with patients. I've seen improved energy and resilience. I see supporting tissue repair and wound healing. I 2 weeks ago had a patient who had what's called an avulsion fracture, where the tendon ripped a part of the fibula off the bone. So the fibula broke. And she started using the mat, the cloud, like continuously. And her orthopedic surgeon couldn't believe how well she was doing. And she's actually supposed to be in a boot, and she's promised me she'll wear it. But she's actually able to weight bear, walk around 2 weeks after the injury. And every patient's different, but the consistency of these themes, it's really been notable. So one of the ways I use to describe what I'm doing is I am helping a person's body to organize better. Think about this for a moment. We start with the conception of the egg and the sperm, and it forms a single cell. That cell is a stem cell, and it begins to divide into other stem cells. Eventually, we end up with a ball of stem cells. But the stem cells then start to differentiate into different types of tissue. So a cell that forms our skin is different than a cell that forms our liver, is different than a cell that forms our heart, is different than a neuron, a cell that is a nerve cell, et cetera, et cetera. These are all different cells. How do the cells that all started from one cell, how do they know which type of cell to become? And how do they know where to go? And my answer And what I realized as I began to research this is electricity, electromagnetic forces play a critical role in this. And they continue to play a critical role throughout our lives, helping us to not only self-heal, self-correct, but literally to maintain our structure. And the EMF is actually working like a pruning device to help us maintain our organization and our shape and all the individual structures that we are. So this is an amazing new field of study. And it goes along, it's as big as the discovery of the genome. You've heard of the genome. The genome was the discovery of the human gene by Watson and Crick in the mid 1950s that actually then explained how we make what's called RNA, and RNA make proteins, and this is all protein. So we are formed by that code. And that is now referred to as the genome. Then in the early 2000s, a new study blew open and a whole new system that was as big in its effect on the human body was discovered. And this is the gut biome or the microbiome. And I want to introduce you to a new field of research, the electrome. The bottom line is electricity is doing far more than we ever realized to organize our body and facilitate important biological processes from conception throughout our entire life. So, how does this actually apply to a patient? I want to just share with you how significant a change this can be. And the reason I tell this story is this patient, the only thing that they added to their regimen that resulted in any change was electromagnetic activation. This patient had a rather challenging history. She had debilitating migraines for years and years. They finally realized that this was caused by excessive mucus production in her sinuses, in the head, and the pressure of this congestion was exacerbating the headaches. So they decided that they would remove the endothelial tissue. This is the tissue that makes mucus. And they did one surgery, and then they did a second surgery, and they're still having the headaches. They do a third surgery, still having the headaches. And finally, they wanted to do a fourth surgery. She was like, no, enough is enough. And she started to look for other solutions. She came to me. We started to do osteopathy, and specifically cranial osteopathy, which relates to the actual organization and motion of the cranial bones. And she started to actually get improvement, and she had her headaches were decreased in severity, in longevity. She started to need fewer medications, which was really great because she started taking less steroids. She's now taking less antibiotics. The antibiotics really are hard on the gut biome that I referred to earlier, because they not only wipe out the bad bacteria that's causing your infection, but they do have an effect on the gut. And so that's a whole part of that system. But she started to need less medications. And that was very rewarding. But when I went to Africa, I alluded to this earlier, I saw an opportunity. I'd been saying to her, please, would you consider acquiring a cloud? And she would say, well, I don't feel anything when I lay on this. I don't really know. I'm really skeptical. She didn't say I'm skeptical, but she was very skeptical. So I said, I'm going to be away for 3 weeks. I will make it possible for you to take my cloud. And here's the regimen I want you to do. I want you to use it twice daily in the morning, once at night. So the last appointment before I left, she had a sinus infection that had been going on for 2 months. She had seen two ear, nose, throat specialists, and they had given her 2 rounds of antibiotics, and nothing was working. They had tried steroids, nothing was working. So the only thing that changes is she starts to lie on the cloud. And so that's why I'm bringing this patient up, because it's a good experiment. And because that's the only change. And within 10 days, the 2 month sinus infection resolved. There was no other change. It was the electromagnetic activation. And so today I'm going to talk about why that's possible, what that electromagnetic activation is actually doing in the body that makes this possible. And a nice addition to that, 2 things. She, instead of having 3 to 4 migraines a month, she has 2 migraines. Sorry, she had 3 to 4 migraines weekly. She has 2 migraines for the entire month. And she only needed to take her medication, her migraine medication, once. I mean, this is remarkable. And the last thing is she's very lethargic and has problems with energy and getting even the basics in life done. And she said, I'm having days where I feel like my old self again. So, what happened? What's going on? And the answer lies in this basic metabolic panel, something that if you've gone to the doctor, every doctor orders this. They either order a complex or a basic metabolic panel. What is that measuring? This is the blood work that the doctor orders for you. And what is that measuring? And look what it's measuring. I have it up here. And if you look at the bottom of the screen, you see these ions, these electrically charged minerals, sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium. I've made it larger here. And so these ions, these are electrically charged particles, and they are at the basis of electrical physiology in the body. And so the electrical body was first discovered in the late 1700s by a scientist, Galvani, who was experimenting with frogs' legs. And maybe you've seen this in a basic high school biology class. And hopefully they don't use poor frogs anymore, but the frog's legs would actually twitch when applied with an electrical current. And the scientists at the time, they started to accept it, but then there was another scientist, Volta, who the term volt, as in voltage, he claimed that there was no such thing as biological electricity. And so biological electricity has been relegated to a back burner for a long, long time. And it wasn't until really the mid 1800s that they conclusively proved that the nervous system was running on electricity. And it wasn't actually until the 1950s that they proved the system by which the nervous system runs on electricity. And I'm going to review that in brief detail today so you can understand how electrophysiology works. Following the nervous system, the cardiac system, the heart, was proven to work on electricity. And by the late 1890s, they had created the precursor to this, the EKG, electrocardiogram. And the first machines were massive, but eventually we got to the point today, this is in clinics and hospitals. And I do want to make a point here, which is the leads that you are connected to the human body to generate this electrocardiogram. Where do they go? Well, they go on an arm, they'll go on a leg, and they'll go across the chest. So I don't know if you can see, I'll tip down. I have my hands, I can put my hands on my skin and I don't feel any electricity. And the point I want to make is that the electrocardiogram does feel electricity. So the amount of electricity that is generating through the cells, whether they're cardiac cells, neural cells, it's very small. And the corresponding electricity that the mat and the electromagnetic waves forms that the mat is using, the cloud is using, are matched to the electromagnetic forces of the cells. So when people lie on the mat and they say, I'm not feeling anything. Well, put your fingers where the electrocardiogram leads go, and why don't you feel anything either? And do you doubt this? But the EKG, but no, this is being conclusively proven. And here, this is proof that the nervous system works off electricity. This is a measurement of the brain's electrical activity. So the electrome, this new field, really joins the genome and the microbiome. And just to, I've been thrown around this term, but just to say it again, in the early 2000s, there was a realization that we are about 40 trillion cells. And just in case there's scientists or doctors watching this, I want to acknowledge the number of cells we are varies greatly. So I'm using 40 trillion for today. It's always agreed it's in the trillions, but whether it's how many tens is debatable. So 40 trillion cells. So is us. And yet with the microbiome, what they discovered was that there are trillions times trillions times trillions more cells, fungi, even parasites that are not us, that are separate living organisms from us, that are living in our gut, and that we actually need. And we are just learning more and more about this. And for instance, Parkinson's, for a long time, Parkinson's disease was thought to be a neurological disease. Now they're beginning to look at the gut and thinking Parkinson's really starts in the gut. And what part does the microbiome play? So these systemic organizations are critical. And the newest organization is the electron. There was a scientist, he won the Nobel Prize in 1937 for the importance of citric acid, vitamin C in human health, Albert Szent-Györgyi. And he talked about there are 4 dimensions with which biologists must be concerned. And he's saying this in 1937. He's talking about the macroscopic, which is the anatomy, the bones and the organs, the microscopic, which is the cells, the molecular proteins, which really hadn't been discovered in 1937 in the sense of DNA, RNA, protein relationship and not being discovered. But he was already talking about that. And then what's even more amazing is he was talking about this submolecular or electronic organization, which needs to be studied. So, and then I love this Nikola Tesla quote. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And that is what electromagnetic frequency is. I mean, just by the name of it, it's energy, frequency, and vibration. So we are on the cusp of a new understanding of a part of what helps us to achieve health and to organize our bodies better, to self-heal and self-correct. So leading this research is researchers at Tufts University. And there's a PhD scientist, Michael Levin, and he stated, electrical dimensions of life can exert control over genes. So the electron can influence the genome. Think about that. Genes can be influenced by electromagnetic frequency, providing a way to hack other systems we thought were too complex to precisely control. And then he goes on. This deeper understanding of bioelectricity will yield a bioelectric code. So we have a gene code, we are learning the microbiome code, and now we're starting on this new code. And the code is written in ions. So go back to the start of my presentation and the basic metabolic blood work panel. What do they measure? Ions. This is what he's talking about. Sodium, calcium, chloride, potassium. And the code is written in not only the ions, but the ion channels. And this is what it looks like. And so let me just see if I can just do that. Sorry. So this is a graphic representation of a cell wall. And so we have the outer and the inner wall of the cell. The blue color at the top, if you can see my cursor, is what's called the extracellular fluid. That's outside the cell. And inside the cell is where is this peach color. And basically the ions, what they do is in a resting state, the sodium accumulates on the outside of the cell. The potassium accumulates on the inside of the cell. Now, the potassium is slightly less, is a little more negatively charged, sorry, less negatively charged inside the cell. And so it's a minus 70 millivolts inside the cell relative to outside the cell. But that difference in electrical charge is important because this, what looks like a coffee bean, and that's a representation of an ion channel. When the ion channel receives chemicals that tell it to open, then we have an interchange of ions. The potassium runs out and the sodium flushes in. And that is actually generates the neural charge that tells the nerve cell to signal to the next nerve cell to the next cell. So this is what is actually, when we have a nerve impulse, this is what is happening trillions of times over across a single nerve chain. This is what is happening in cardiac muscle. This is what's happening to actually create just about every type of biological reaction in the body. It's the basic movement of these ions. And so they go from a resting state to an active state to a repolarization state. Now, the charge differential that is a big part of making this happen, it's negative 70 millivolts. Again, think about that. That's 1/1000th of the voltage in the battery of a common hearing aid. So again, when people say, I'm lying on this thing and I'm not really feeling it, well, yes, because what we're trying to influence is on a much more subtle level. Let me go back to here. So we are electric from the moment of conception. When the sperm enters the egg, it leads to a surge of calcium. And we actually get a huge flux of calcium outside the egg. And that causes the release of zinc from the egg. I'm sorry, I want to say that again. We get a surge of calcium in the egg, which causes the release of zinc out of the egg. And as the zinc shoots out, it binds to small molecules, which actually fluorescence and create light. And so this is an actual recording of that phenomenon. And so that is caused by the calcium flux and the release of zinc. What also happens with that calcium flux is it creates an expansion and contraction within the cell. So the cell is actually pulsing. It's actually moving. And I don't think we'll get into it today, but I'm happy to talk to other medical professionals, or if you are interested, about how these calcium surges are responsible for creating wave patterns in the body, such as the Traub-Herring wave that osteopaths work with and that we sense with our hands as part of our therapeutic work. But this is, again, generated by ions. So we basically covered this. The movement in and out of the cells by the ions causes a pumping motion within the cells themselves. And the pattern becomes reflected in the developing cells. So this causes a spiraling of blood and tissue as these cells develop right from the start. We are starting to spiral. So think in your head of what an embryo looks like and how it folds up into two curved ends. I'll show you that in a moment. And then as the embryo progresses to a fetus and gets bigger, it unfolds. And we have this curling, uncurling. And again, this is all influenced by various forces, including the electron. Now, again, how does one cell become 40 trillion cells? And I really wanted to share, I'm very excited to present this work that's being done at Tufts. And this is work by Danny S. Adams, Laura Vandenberg, both PhDs. And what you're looking at is basically embryonic stem cells of a tadpole. And there's two little tadpoles here. Each circle is an individual little tadpole embryo. And what they've done is they've dyed the embryo with the dye is reactive to electricity. So when electricity goes through the dye, which is being applied to the tadpole, it releases light. So when you see light on these embryos, when I run this video in a moment, what you're seeing is electricity. And then what is amazing is the actual physical features that are outlined by the electricity emerge after the fact. So the electricity is actually laying down a precise blueprint, imprint of where and how the face will actually form. So let's listen here.
Just cell divisions, lots of activity, front end of the spinal cord. There's the brain, mouth, pharyngeal arches, eye, nose, ear.
Can we see that again? Is that okay? So
just cell divisions, lots of activity, front end of the spinal cord.
So that's the spinal cord. That's the brain, my cursor.
Mouth, pharyngeal arches.
That's the eyes,
Eye,
mouth,
nose,
ear. And so you saw that light up first because electricity is preceding the cell. And this is what they're now believing keeps happening through life. So this is part of what allows us to continually regenerate. And I love this video. And this is from Howard Hughes Medical Institute and came out in 2018. And this is real time recording of stem cells in the embryo forming into a mouse embryo. And the bright luminescence here is the brain and the central spinal nervous system. And you can see the whole embryo, and it is starts as a ball, and these electrical forces going through specific axes of organization actually dictate how the embryo will move, that it starts to fold in on itself. And there's other mechanical forces involved in that too, and how structure actually forms in the embryo. And this is part of this new field of science. So This is the paper in which this was published. So let's bring it to some of the research that's being done with the cloud. And this is a presentation by Dr. Jeff Wolfman, MD. And we're going to watch recording of a capillary, or it's probably an arterial, which shows red blood cells. And by the way, guess what? The red blood cells are charged. They have a negative charge. And charge differential between negative, the red blood cell, and the endothelial wall is part of what suspends and causes a vertical flow of the blood through the system. Again, electricity, electricity, electricity. So here we show before a treatment with the cloud, you can see the blood. These are individual cells moving through. And then after treatment with the cloud, you can see the difference. And this is why the microvascular improves with use of the cloud. And then this is a wonderful presentation of experiment done by Dr. Kafka's lab. Let me see.
And then you can see this summarized here in the time-lapse recording. You can see that the separated cell layers grow towards each other, corresponding to wound healing. And the electromagnetic field-treated Petri dishes show a higher speed. In other words, we have proven that this is a genuine physical effect.
So just to recap, the top layer is of connective tissue cells, has no exposure to the cloud. The bottom layer was treated with the cloud, and you can see how much faster the cells are forming. But now, given what I've shared with you, you begin to understand why that is actually possible. And I don't want to get into this paper. This would put us in the weeds. But Maxwell was a scientist in the mid-1800s, and he brilliantly brought together a number of different fields, specifically electric, magnetic, and even light, as in illumination light, and created formulas that showed how these different forces, which we now collectively call EMF, were all interrelated. And so the cloud is producing electromagnetic force with the generation of the microcurrents through the coils. So that's how it works. That's how the device works. And that is going through the body. And what this paper published in 2023 supports is that the way we make our gasoline, the human body's version of gasoline, which is, the technical term is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So adenosine triphosphate, the production of that is increased when you put an electromagnetic force into the body. And so this is really critical. You think about it, we are trillions of cells, and hopefully now you understand every cell is like a battery. And so the cloud, when someone explains to you that the cloud is a way to recharge our battery, what they're really saying is that the electromagnetic force going into the body by lying on the cloud actually is recharging and upregulating the production of energy in the mitochondria, that's our energy factory, in every single cell. More ATP, adenosine triphosphate, our gasoline, equals more energy. And I'm not even going to get into this, but I'm happy to discuss it. This gets into more the signaling and specific ideas in that paper. And there's a great Nikola Tesla quote about the movement of the body at between 6 to 8 hertz. and how that has been found to be related now in the current decade with correspondence to the release of calcium ions. Again, it's these basic building blocks, the ions, the ion channels, and the electrical system, which is really regulating us. And so the promotion of cellular metabolism, the removal of toxins, free radicals, waste compounds from the cells requires that the charge of the cell membrane is kept at a high level. This, by the way, is from that paper on Maxwell. This is a direct quote. To slow down cell aging at the same time, it is necessary to build up the cellular energy portion, and this is an essential prerequisite for the synthesis of energy-rich ATP molecules. The activation of charge through ions can be achieved through the cloud's pulse electromagnetic activity, as well as osteopathic treatments. It's also being found to result from sound healing, which is why many people are drawn to that, and laser therapy. So we are electric, and it's great to listen to all the science, but I get up in the morning to treat patients, and nothing is really more rewarding to me than the treatment of patients. And it gives me great pleasure, and I feel honored to have Paige Russell joining us this morning. And I'll let her share her personal experience and how all this science changed her life.
Thank you, Dr. Walter. I appreciate you having me here and letting me be a part of this. I'm always amazed every time I learn more about the cloud or learn more about the science behind it, which I learned a lot today. I can just understand so much better how and why the cloud supported my recovery. So I'm happy to get to share my story with you all today. It didn't start off as a good story, but it ends as a really good story. 4 years ago, I got very sick and nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. I saw every single discipline that Western medicine offered. All those doctors told me that they couldn't help me. They didn't know what was wrong with me. And meanwhile, my health was declining rapidly to the point that I had to stop working completely and I was almost bedridden. I ended up developing chronic fatigue syndrome, brain fog. I became sensitive to everything in my environment. That includes light, sound, chemicals, smells, people. I couldn't be around people. I ended up having to live in complete isolation and be shut off from the world. Finally, after 2 years of this, through word of mouth, I got connected to the right naturopathic doctor who was able to finally diagnose me. Turns out I had mold toxicity, and she got me on the right treatment plan. My treatment plan, though, was very robust, and it was difficult for me to implement all of it given my limited energy capacity. But part of my treatment plan included seeing Dr. Walter for osteopathic manipulations and all the wonderful things that he knows how to do. And honestly, it was the only time in my recovery process that my body actually felt any relief. I finally felt better. And that feeling increased even more once Dr. Walter started using the cloud with me. And because I saw the results in his office, I saw the difference that it made, I decided to get my own cloud. After a couple of weeks of using the cloud every day, I ended up having a lot of repressed emotions and childhood traumas begin to surface. And I was completely caught off guard. I did not realize any of that was hiding inside me. And I didn't know it at the time, but this was the breakthrough that I'd been waiting for. My health started improving. I started processing these repressed emotions. I put in all the work it takes for self-improvement. I had the help of therapy. I had a brain retraining program that all supported this for me. And it was a very slow process, to be honest. It took me a number of months working on this full time because this was all I could do was try to recover. Um, and eventually I saw major health improvements. And I knew that I was finally starting to get better. And there came a time in my recovery when I knew I was ready to utilize the cloud even more so than I had been at the beginning. And Sabine actually helped me put together a custom protocol for using the cloud that really just skyrocketed my recovery. And I had this crazy month of transformation. Over the course of a few weeks, I had multiple major breakthroughs emotionally, physically, just the whole realm of things. And it culminated in me having a spiritual awakening. And I literally woke up the next day feeling fully recovered. I felt like my health was back, my brain was back, my body was back, everything was back. And it was just, I was astounded. I was amazed. I was so grateful. This is the first time I had felt good consistently, fully good like myself in 4 years. So it was really just a powerful transformation that I went through. And I am so grateful because I have learned after the fact how large of a role the cloud played in those breakthroughs and in that transformation. And it allowed my body to recover all of my energy, all of my health, everything that I had been missing. And honestly, I feel better now than I've ever felt in my entire life. I am actually really grateful for this because I have found my authenticity. I have found my life force. I have found my light, my love, everything that makes me feel amazing and better than I ever have before. So I am just grateful to get to have worked with you, Dr. Walter and Sabine. Both supported my recovery so greatly. And I just want to spread the word. I used the cloud because I knew it helped me, but I know now how significant it was in my journey. And I've learned even more today on why that was the case. So thank you for letting me tell my story with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been an honor working with you. You're amazing.
Thank you.
Well, and Dr. Walter, you are amazing too. It is all about the integration of the electromagnetic molecular activation into especially, the alignment. And I believe that what Paige has shared with us today as a spiritual awakening could all be hopefully soon also proven when we look at that a person with their entire might, their entire energy, and the entire physiology come back online. And this is essentially what we're talking about. Dr. Walter, you have been, the first that really explained it in a way that I think we all can understand it. This is a wealth of information. When I said earlier that you are an avid researcher and a relentless and driven by a relentless curiosity, that this is the proof of it, because you pulled from so many factors spanning over 200 plus years of scientific research that has then also been repressed again. You pull this all back together, and this is essentially the message that this time that we're in meets the old paradigm that has taught us, that we're just biochemical, chain reactions. We're skin and bone and biochemical reactions. Take a pill, take a supplement, and then watch for whatever the biochemical reaction is supposed to do, and then also tolerate all of these side effects, etc., etc. And now we're discovering, wait a minute, what makes actually all of these biochemical reactions possible is the electric, function,
Electron.
the electrons. So you explained the biome, the microbiome, and now we're coming into the electron. And this is essentially this paradigm change that Tesla has predicted, that we all have essentially intuited and waited for. And here it is. You've done an incredible job explaining how the cells are working and how truly our pulse electromagnetic activation can enhance that and amplify that and multiply, that healing response, so that we can really truly feel human again, lit up, tapped in, turned on. Yeah, it is that life force energy that Paige feels again, and she is brand new, reborn in a way. And this would have not been possible without these very, very subtle, and this is another wonderful point, Dr. Walter, that you made, these subtle, subtle frequencies. I think what I really want to add to this brilliance that you brought forth today is that the frequencies in the cloud that Professor Dr. Wolf Kafka over his life has gathered are symphonic. In other words, it's like a symphony that is specifically with precision designed for those molecular structures, which are the architecture of everything. They are the architecture of every organ, every cell, every system, everything. And so it's music for your molecules. And yes, you won't hear it. Our human ear, our senses, will not register this beautiful symphony of our birthright to be alive and to be happy and to be healthy. But that's the music that the cloud brings into people's lives. And what we're seeing is that everything gets better. Not only the autonomy, autonomy, whatever.
Anatomy.
Anatomy, exactly,
Yes.
anatomy, but also people's minds, people's emotions, the emotional healing that Paige was talking about. It unlocks creativity and unlocks new potential for health and happiness on so many dimensions, so many levels. And you've done a beautiful job, presenting this all. I think it's very important that we now tell people where they can find more information. First and foremost, go to www.findinghealth.info. Findinghealth.info, because you go to the web to find info, so it's not .com, it's findinghealth.info, and that's where you can connect with Dr. Walter. And if you want to fly out, go see him in San Diego, California. And also his website, the Centropics website is centropics.us. And what was your handle again, Dr. Walter?
Here, I'll just share it with you. And it's, so.
Dr. Walter Cohen, D.O., exactly. Walter Cohen, D.O. You can actually, you don't have to remember the EN/pages. It's centropics.us/Walter Cohen, D.O. to find more. And that's also where you can buy the cloud. Very, very important. The cloud is a system. So if you want to have the results that Paige has seen and other people have seen, we recommend that you buy the complete system, which is the large mat and the small mat, which functions as a local applicator, and the two together create best results. Plus you can take the mini on in your office every day, on the go, but definitely also while you're on the planes, because the electromagnetic radiation that the planes have is very, very bad for your cellular health. So definitely take the mini on all of your flights.
Absolutely. And also, what another exciting aspect to this is that the results people get with their pets. So I have a woman who she had a very arthritic dog, 14 years old, big dog, lab, and tried all kinds of remedies, acupuncture, and she bought the cloud. And she thought, well, let me just try this. And she lured her dog with a treat, and he lies on the cloud. The next day, she brings the cloud out, and he doesn't even need the treat. He just starts following her, and she puts it down and he just gets on it. And like now that's their regimen. She just brings it out. So it's one thing for me to say, hey, this has really improved my life, or for Paige, but the animals have no agenda. I have a woman who owns horses, and the horse had a bad knee injury, and the vet couldn't believe how quickly it healed. So it's the animals, they have no agenda. They just, are, and it's been really amazing. That's been a pleasant surprise. So I just share that with you too.
Actually, that is very, very true. We had a friend who actually drove on the freeway and saw what looked like an injured or halfway dead dog on the freeway, and took the next exit and came back around and picked up this dog who was bleeding out of all openings, ears,
Mhm,
mouth,
mhm.
eyes, even
Ooh,
internal bleeding, and brought it to the closest vet on her trip, on her road trip. And that vet said, like, there is absolutely nothing that we can do for this dog, but we can, give him a kind death. And it would have been reckless for her to leave the dog there. But you know what? She said, no, I'm going to take this dog with me. Why? Because she had the cloud. And then she put the cloud like a blanket on the dog, and it took less than a couple of days, and all of his organ functions, came back, and he was able to eat again and
amazing,
play and run again. Literally
amazing.
at doorstep, completely brought back to life. And we've also seen this with people that have been in hospice, who were brought back to life. Yeah, this molecular activation, I believe, is very, very central, especially since also so many young um, uh, people are suffering from this chronic fatigue syndrome in their 20s, in their 30s. It's becoming
Absolutely.
more of a problem. And I think it has to do with all of the smart devices that were surrounded with the Bluetooth, the Wi-Fi, that literally, sucks the energy out of ourselves. So the main message that we all have for you listening to this is charge your bodies. Charge every cell. Every cell is a battery. The entire body is, a universe of batteries. And when you lay on the cloud, yes, you won't feel a thing, but you will feel the results. And that's our main message today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this. And go to www.findinghealth.com. And thank you all so very
Got
much.
info.
Dot info. Oh, my goodness. Dot info. Thanks so much. Mhm.